I decided to contact a big publisher. Who is the biggest publisher in the world? Penguin. I said, okay, let's go for it. And so I pitched the book before writing the book. And before they accepted the idea of the procrastinator, which was only later, I think in February, I started writing it. One thing about the process, they did tell me, well, since you're an anti-procrastinator, we're going to give you 3 months to write the book, which I did.
Your present does not define your future. You do. Veronica Llorca-Smith is the perfect example. In 2020, she felt burnt out climbing the corporate ladder. In 2021, she was unemployed and locked abroad with her 2 kids. In 2023, she started her Substack newsletter and published her first book, her second and third. Fast forward to today, she is on fire and got a book deal with #1 publisher in the industry, Penguin Random House. Often people only show you the trophies and the medals, but the real beauty is in the journey. Veronica's message: when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade, use the seeds to plant your own lemon tree. Because Veronica is on a mission to empower you to realize your greatness. So Veronica, thank you so much for hopping on a Zoom call today. On your website, you say about yourself that you are a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant, you're a public speaker, and an author. And I also know that you are very interested in inclusive leadership and in cultural agility. For those of you who might not know you, just to set the scene, how would you introduce yourself?
So I love to say that my purpose is to drive inclusion and to help people unlock their potential. I think we all have potential in ourselves to do so much more than we give ourselves credit for. And so the way that I do that and how I try to empower people is then through these different channels, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a keynote presentation. I've published multiple books, I write my newsletters, but my vision and everything falls under that umbrella is how I empower people, how I try to motivate people to really unlock the greatness in them.
Could you tell us a bit more about how you started a new career after leaving your corporate world?
So I was in the corporate world for over 15 years, and I thought that, climbing the corporate ladder was my thing, but then I fell off the corporate ladder. And how this happened was during the pandemic in 2021, I was living in Hong Kong with my family, and I left to on holidays. I thought I was just going on holidays for 2 weeks to see my family in Spain. So I left with one purple suitcase for just me and my 2 daughters who were 3 and 4. And as we landed, they changed the policy and we couldn't come back. So we couldn't come back for 1 month, then it turned into 3 months. And then we ended up being locked abroad for over 1 year. So that journey started in Spain. And then I took the girls to Australia, which is where my husband is from and his family was there, even though he stayed behind. And during that period, it was quite challenging because I was in a new country. I was a foreigner. As you can tell, I have an accent. I didn't really have a network in Australia. So I had all these different challenges and I wasn't able to find a job. I wasn't able to find a job after 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. And at some point I asked myself, I have to stop being the victim here. Sure, I don't have all these things. I don't have a network. I don't have all these value that people see or they don't see it, but I do have value. And so that's how I really reframed my mindset into, what can I do? What is under my control? If I can't find a job, how can I turn all the value that I have, both at a professional level, but also at a personal level, just like everybody else does, into something else? And that's how I started writing. I published my first article on Medium in September, so almost 2 years ago. And that was really like the first little step of what then became a career that started to blossom in different directions. I started to write articles, then it turned into books, then I started to do public speaking. And my big philosophy of the growth mindset is the lemon tree mindset. And that's the name of my Substack newsletter, which is, when life gives you lemons, you shouldn't make lemonade. You should use the seeds to plant your own lemon tree, which is what I'm doing now. And I'm trying to empower people to plant their own as well.
So your hobby is a pilot. And what did you do in your corporate career?
So I used to work first at Apple for 7 years, and I was in leadership positions, helping the brand, especially on the B2B side. So let's say selling Apple products to corporates in Hong Kong. And I started here in the very first shop in Hong Kong in 2012. So that was really like the early days of Apple here. And it was super exciting. It was like being in this massive tech brand, but at the same time having a very startup and entrepreneurial mindset. And then I worked for Estée Lauder for one of the brands leading the entire region of Asia Pacific. So from Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, North Asia, Japan, everything.
So I think that this is also where your testimonials then are coming from, because I saw on your website that you have testimonials from Michael Page and Apple and so on. Is this like combined linked to your corporate career then?
Yes and no. Some of them, it's actually clients, like you mentioned, Michael Page. So I did a big event for them here in Hong Kong for their VIP clients a month ago, talking about inclusive language. I talk a lot about inclusion and things related to culture. I'm super passionate about that. Apple, yes, it was for my corporate career. So it's a little bit of a mix. It's people that I have worked with in different capacities. Some of them are clients. Some of them are people that I worked in the past with.
The Lemon Tree Mindset, your newsletter, has the slogan that it's the only newsletter that combines business, mindset, and well-being. And for me, for instance, it was like, oh, this is really interesting. It's definitely something I should subscribe to. Could you share a bit more about this and how everything you told us now like funnels into this newsletter?
To be super honest with you, I really struggle with this idea of having a niche. Like everyone is have a niche. And I find that so suffocating because as I just talked about, I have so many other interests. I love culture. I love languages. I'm a triathlete as well. I'm a mom. So I have all these different things. And I decided to do things my own way. I said, I don't want to just talk about writing or just talk about inclusion. And so for me, I brought all of this together in this umbrella that covers the writing, which for me is really my voice. I really express myself through writing, and I really encourage people to write. You don't have to publish, but I do find that when you write, you're really able to find clarity, which is a very scarce commodity these days. And then for me, the mindset and the well-being is really part of the same thing, because we have so many challenges nowadays, whether it's imposter syndrome, whether it's burning out, whether it's becoming addicted to technology. And so I like to talk as well about the mindset that we need to have to do these things, because it's not only, okay, show up like we're doing today on a session online. Is everything that goes behind that, is building the confidence, is overcoming your limiting beliefs, is making sure that you feel comfortable where you are. And so for me, it was really about bringing all these different things together and not just position myself as the person who is going to give you hacks to grow on Substack. I don't want to do that. It's part of what I do, but it's not only that. So that's my approach to the whole niche versus vision thing.
And you not only have this newsletter, you have also a book called The Lemon Tree Mindset, which is a guide to publish your first ebook. I guess so many people want to publish their first ebook. And could you share a bit more about this, Veronica?
Sure. So we're actually talking about two different books. So one is The Lemon Tree Mindset, which is the subtitle is 19 Lessons to Reinvent Yourself. Because when I went through that reinvention that I just described from the corporate world into starting to build my personal brand and writing and so on, I had to overcome a lot of mental limiting beliefs, let's say. And so I decided that my journey could actually be very helpful for someone else who wanted to do something similar. Not necessarily even write, but if you want to leave the corporate world and start something new. So it was kind of journaling my experience with the specific lessons, but making it into something very actionable that someone else could use. So for example, I talk about being your best ambassador, and how it's so important to really sell yourself, because for so many people, especially introverts or especially writers in general, we're waiting to be discovered, and hello, no one is going to come and discover you. So I talk about that. I talk about unlocking your greatness and how you really have to believe yourself that you have value to provide. You don't need to wait, like I was waiting in Australia, for a recruiter to say, oh, Veronica is great. No, we all have our greatness and we have to really take it out and invest in that. So it was really a book that is super actionable, minimalist book. I think it had 10,000 or 12,000 words. So you can read that literally in less than an hour. Each of the chapters comes with a specific exercise. And the idea is that by the end of it, you have inspiration, but you also have something super actionable and super tangible that you can start working with as you start to pave your own path.
the Lemon Tree Mindset is not your first book. I think your first book is the one where you talk about living in 9 countries and speaking 6 languages, the one called The Flight Home. Am I right?
So let me go chronologically. So the first one is actually the Lemon Tree Mindset. That was the one that was published. The second one was Conquering Your Burnout, which, as the name indicates, it's the same approach. I did go through corporate burnout when I was in my corporate career, and I decided to turn that into a book to help people. So my intention with that book was honestly to help people. I never really intended to make a big business out of that, but it was a nice way for me to have closure with that dark experience and pass on the baton to someone else who might be going through something similar. And then after that, I published my first book with a publisher, with an indie publisher, which is the one that you're referring to. So that's The Flight Home, which starts with my story of being locked abroad. And then I do this big flashback into my life, going through each of the 9 countries where I've lived, to then explain how I came to start everything that I'm doing now. So that was the third book.
And then I saw you also have this Me Time collaboration book. And then I wasn't sure which one was the Amazon bestseller, because I know so many people want to become an Amazon bestseller. So what about From Zero to Amazon bestseller and Me Time collaboration book?
So Me Time was technically the first book. I don't talk about it too much because now I have a lot of other books to talk about, but I think it's really important to mention it because it was a collaboration between different authors. And how it happened, it was my very first podcast was with this organization called Me Time. It's like a podcast of 5 minutes of well-being chats, let's say. So after I did this podcast, they said, we want to do this collaboration book with all our different guest speakers that we have had during the year. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. So I only had to write one chapter, which was pretty much the transcript of my podcast. And then they organized everything. They put it together, they curated it, they did the formatting, they brought all these different authors together and they published it. But it was amazing. And also my message is for someone who wants to write a book, that's a very easy, as in it's a low-hanging fruit. There are a lot of companies that do that, and you just get your step, your first step in there. So for that reason, I thought that was extremely valuable. It helped me also overcome imposter syndrome and say, okay, this is not that hard. I did it with other people. Now I'm going to do it with myself. So that was the Me Time collaboration, which was a company from Australia, by the way. And then the From Zero to Amazon bestseller is not a printed book, it's a guide. And I like to call it a guide because it's super actionable. And I decided to write that because when I self-published my first 2 books, the reason why I self-published was because I was rejected by publishers. And so I had to learn everything myself. I chose Amazon, so the platform, KDP, how to publish, categories, SEO, everything, formatting. And after 2 books, I was like, wow, I have so much knowledge now. First, I don't want to forget it. So selfishly, I wanted to have a guide that I can always go back to. But I figured that there were so many people who want to publish a book, and they're probably going through the exact same process that I went through. Frustrations with publishers. Then there's a very dangerous type of publisher called hybrid publisher or predatory publisher or vanity publishers that are going to tell you that your book is amazing. I want to publish it. Please pay 10,000 euros. I don't want people to do that. So I wrote this super actionable guide. It's only less than $10 for people who want to start to at least have some reference and say, hey, this doesn't have to be that hard. And that's why I published this guide.
And does this mean that one of your books became an Amazon bestseller?
Yes, a lot of people ask me that. So not only one, multiple became bestsellers. And I want to clarify so that this is not taken out of context. When you're saying Amazon bestsellers, you can look at it from different things, right? Like if you look at the 3 million books of Amazon, I'm not in the top 20 of the 3 million. However, what Amazon does very smartly is have a lot of different categories. And in these different categories, they are going to have the top 100 bestsellers. And inside those top 100, then you have the top 20, the top 10. And so most of my books have actually been able to be on the top 20 or top 10 in some of their respective categories, because I'm very strategic and I'm honestly quite smart at picking categories that are competitive, where I know that I can get visibility and yet have some good ranking. So that's something that I also explain in the book, like how to get to the top of your category. so that you can get more traffic. You get more traffic, you get more reviews. Also for marketing assets, it's great. Like I have so many assets where the lemon tree last week was number 7 in its category. And so that really helps you also with the whole promotion and the marketing piece.
Hi, it's Christina. Veronica is inspiring, isn't she? And you can meet her inside the online writing school in a live session. If you want to snag a spot, all you have to do is to become a paid subscriber for my newsletter. Just go to my Online Writing Club newsletter and become a paid subscriber. What do you think about pre-launching? How important is pre-launching, especially in regard to reviews on Amazon, because reviews are so important? Did you already have a network or so which you asked to write a review for you?
I learned a lot during this process. And my first book, in terms of the strategy, compared to my last book, which I did with the publisher, was very different. So I'm going to tell you the things that I learned throughout the process. Pre-launch is super important because that's when you really start to create all this buzz. But from an Amazon standpoint, is really on the launch day that is going to say, okay, you have all these accumulated pre-sales that are going to be consolidated in this one day, and it's going to put you up there, in top of the chart. So that's super, super important. I'm going to give you some little tactical things as well. I did different launches. So I launched my ebook first, and then you launch the printed one, because then you have 2 big moments. And for some of your readers, they are going to be hardcore printed fans, like they still want like the actual book. So that's the launch for them. Whereas for your digital readers, they have the other launch. So you have to be very strategic also in having like those different moments. I had a countdown deal, which creates like this sense of urgency. So if you buy before the launch, you're going to have whatever, 10% or 20%, it doesn't matter, but all of that counts. One thing that really helped me, and that was input from my publisher, was for my last book, which was the one published with a publisher, to have a book launch club. I had never heard of that. I thought it sounded like a party, and I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm like, but what is that? And they said, well, basically, it's before you launch the book, you get a group of people that you trust, that are going to read your book, so have a free preview, and then write reviews, help you promote it. They will write reviews on Amazon. Goodreads is also a very good platform to generate interest, traffic, and reviews. So I did that. And so for my last book, and that was a great lesson, I had my book launch club, which was made of people mostly from Medium and from LinkedIn. So for my network of other creators, writers, people who are interested in launching their own book as well. And it was amazing because, just for context, getting 10 reviews when you're an author like myself, who is not very well known, 10 reviews is a lot. People don't realize how much work you have to put into getting reviews. I think the percentage is something around 5% of your readers will leave a review. Even my mom didn't leave a review. So that's how hard it is. And so getting this group of people who on the first week or 2 are going to put a review on Amazon. They are going to, some of them, I think 7 or 8 wrote also on Goodreads. Many of them posted on LinkedIn. I had a few who wrote articles, full articles on Medium. It was amazing. Like, it was almost like a fast track to what took me otherwise 2 months to achieve with my previous books. So there was a lot of learning that went from that. The other thing is that a lot of authors put a lot of focus on the launch, and this is the hallelujah moment. And then it's like, oh, publish and vanish. And they think that if it's a great book, it's going to sell. And if it's not a great book, it's not going to sell. And it doesn't work like that. It's always on. Like, I think 2 days ago, I was still promoting the Lemon Tree Mindset. And that's why it was number 7 last week, not when I launched a year ago, because this is ongoing. I pitch to interviews. I do webinars or calls like we're doing today. This week, I hosted 2 webinars, one for my paid subscribers and one for another community of another writer on self-publishing. And I don't sell my book, but it's still part of my branding. People see me and they're like, oh, yes, I trust Veronica. I like what she says. She has her books. So it's constantly finding ways to sell your book without selling your book. When I launched my first books, I also studied ads, paid ads. So I invested in Amazon ads. I invested in Facebook ads, and I stopped now after a few months. The reason why is because my Substack does a much better job at promoting my books. And let me explain why, and to give some very specific statistics. On average, the cost per click on paid on Amazon, for example, is almost $1, $0.91. That was last year. Of course, it depends on what words you go for and all of that, but that's an average. So can you imagine, like every time someone clicks on your book, you're almost paying $1. Now you pay per click. That person might or might not buy your book. And so it starts to get a lot of your profit. And I did a trial, and in a very soft way, when I talk about something related, for example, to growth mindset, I added my book. Oh, so this is my book, check it out. This was a newsletter, I think a week ago. I had 29 clicks, which means, and I'm still small in Substack, I'm growing, but that same ad on Amazon, for example, would have costed me almost $30, with the difference being that those clicks that I got from my newsletters are actually people who already like what I write. They already said yes to receiving my newsletter. They are already reading something from me versus strangers. And so the power of a newsletter, whether you do it as a serialized book, whether you use to promote your books, is just amazing.
You somehow developed into a smart writer, into someone who also embraces marketing. And I guess that's why you now signed a deal with Penguin Random House, which is wow, with the anti-procrastinator. Could you tell us a bit more about this, Veronica?
When the year started, 2024, I told myself, I want this to be a big year. And I said, I'm going to be bold and I'm going to be brave and I'm going to take big risks. So I decided to contact a big publisher. Who is the biggest publisher in the world? Penguin. I said, okay, let's go for it. My goal was to talk to one person. I didn't want to send an email. I didn't want to talk to a robot. And so through my network, because I now have a solid network on LinkedIn, I managed to find a person that I could talk to and pitch. So I was over the moon, and it was the representative for the region where I am, Asia. I talked to this woman who was super friendly, and I didn't go with a pitch for a book. And that's the thing that's interesting. I said, look, I explained a little bit about myself, what I have achieved in the past couple of years. I think I proved that I'm not a non-procrastinator. And I said, what are some of the topics that you're looking for? I said, I'm very able to write a book. I have already done it. Here are my credentials, but I would love to hear from you. What do you need? What do you think the market needs? Where is there a gap? Tell me what you need, and then I'll try to see if I can do this matchmaking. Of course, if she told me about Roman history, I wouldn't write that, but I wanted to see if within my area of passion, which is self-improvement, really, there was something there. And so it was really cool. We had like this brainstorming on areas where she saw that there was a gap. And there were a couple of them. One of them was, for example, personal brand. But at the time, and to give context, she thought that it was a good area because there are not that many women who talk about personal brand in the context of a book. So I thought it was a good idea, but I don't have such a strong audience yet to be able to be my own business case. And I really wanted to be able to say, hey, this is not just theory. I wanted to be able to say, this is what I've done as well, so that I have credibility. And so I said, okay, let me go back to you. And so I started to do a brainstorming with myself, and I came back to her with the idea of anti-procrastination, because productivity in general is a topic that is always on. It's an evergreen. Everyone wants to do more of their day, whether you're a busy mom like we are, or someone who has like a job traveling around the world. Everyone wants to squeeze more out of the day. Of course, the challenge is it's also a very saturated space. And so what I sold to her, and it was also very bold, I said, most books out there, they tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. My approach is really leading with self-awareness. And the better you know yourself, the better you know how to self-regulate yourself emotionally, how to manage your sleep, how to get to know your weaknesses, it's really about you. So if I tell you, Christina, oh, you should do this, this, and that because that works for me, it probably would not work for you. And so the big idea was leading productivity and anti-procrastination from a place of self-awareness. I also did say that most books are written by white men, and it would be nice to have a different face in the cover. Again, it was a little bit risky, and she really liked that. She said, you know what, you have a point. And so I pitched the book before writing the book, which I thought was a really cool story that could inspire people there to go out there, put yourself there, take risks, and I never thought that this was going to happen. So I'm really over the moon. One thing about the process, they did tell me, well, since you're an anti-procrastinator, we're going to give you 3 months to write the book, which I did.
3 months to write the book.
I sent already the draft on the 30th of April. So I sent it at 10 a.m. in the morning. I didn't want to rush. I sent it, and now we have like 8 months to go through editing. The editing process is quite long with the big publisher. So we did the structural editing first for almost a month, and now we're starting with the copywriting editing, and then you have proofreading. So it's quite long. Like the whole editing process is 3 times as long as actually writing the book.
Wow. Okay. Wow. But I also think this is amazing that you pumped this out within, 3 months. This is amazing. So then you had this, I guess you sent her a direct message on LinkedIn in January or so, and then you had a call, or you were...
Yeah. December, I already managed to have that initial call. And it was Christmas and all of that, but I already had my idea. And before they accepted the idea of the procrastinator, which was only later, I think in February, I started writing it because I told myself, this is not going to be a roadblocker. I've been rejected many, many times already. And so I went with the mindset of like a bulldozer, like this is going to happen with or without like removing obstacles. And so I started writing it. And by the time they said yes, I wasn't too far into the book, but I had a very good picture and I had full clarity on what I wanted the book to look like, which was the most important thing. So from there, it was really about being super focused and saying, okay, every week I need to get to this stage. I know my capacity of writing. Everyone has a different bandwidth based on your circumstances. And I just had to be very diligent at managing my time and managing my work. And, when you have a timeline like that and this sense of urgency, you just make it happen. Like I never thought that I was going to have this opportunity, and I definitely did not want to miss it.
100%. And how many hours did you have per week to write this book?
I honestly don't know, because as you probably know, as a mom as well, and I juggle a lot of things. I have public speaking. I exercise every single day as well. So it really depends. But to tell you the truth is every time I could, basically, whether I was on the subway to go somewhere, I had my computer. If I took my kids for a play date, very often I would have my computer as well. So it was very, very full on. And that's why it's so difficult for me to tell how many hours, because it's not like when I was in the corporate world that I could really monitor the hours in front of my desk. So I honestly couldn't tell you. I would say many, many, many hours.
Now I'm interested, Veronica, in your day. How does a day in Veronica's life look like?
I wake up super early. And when I say super early, it's embarrassingly early, like 4. I mean, I think I texted you this morning at 4:30 a.m. I do go to bed very early. But as a mom, and I'm a morning person too. So those first hours in the morning is where I have my full clarity. So a lot of the articles that I write, a lot of the thinking that I do is really in the morning before my kids get up at 6 or so. So then it's family time, full on, get the kids ready for school, all of that. And then I have basically from, let's say 8 a.m. until 2:30 or so. This is really like my me time. I do exercise every day, whether it's running. Like today I went for a 17K run, because I always love to be in the headspace when I'm gonna have something like today. It just really helps me like to get rid of the mental fog, have like this big focus and clarity on what I want to talk about. So every day I try to do something, and then it's writing. I had a client meeting today. It's preparing my newsletters. We're going on holiday next week, so I'm also preparing ahead and doing a lot of batch writing. But that's pretty much what it looks like. And then afternoons is with the kids. Once they go to bed, I usually do something more, because I do find that the unconscious does a lot of work for you when you're sleeping. So if I don't know the answer, I'm just going to pop a couple of questions, in my mind, and just let the unconscious do the rest.
Nice. And when do you go to bed then, Veronica? At 8?
9.
I know that you shared on Medium that when you publish a book, you have to switch hats, become an entrepreneur, and start thinking and behaving like one. And you always have to think of your book as your startup. Could you elaborate on this a bit?
Absolutely. And to give a bit of context, what I have seen from most writers is that we, and I'm going to include myself, we love the writing. That's our element. We love, doing the distillation of the ideas and creating and all of that. What we don't like so much in general is the marketing, is going out there, is speaking about your book, is selling yourself. And the reality is that once you publish your book, it becomes a product. And a lot of people romanticize their book. Oh, my book, it's going to be discovered. No one is going to come to discover you or me. We have to uncover ourselves. And if you treat it like an entrepreneur who is launching a startup, that's really the mindset. Like, you have to think of your stakeholders. A lot of people say, oh, my book is for everyone. A book for everyone is a book for no one. I say this very often. It's like a t-shirt that fits all sizes. No, I might squeeze in, but it's not going to be the best one for me. And so it's really important to have this mindset of approaching it like a product. And a product needs sales, it needs marketing, it needs the pre-launch, it needs to be constantly reinvented in a way so that it doesn't get old, because a lot of people, after they publish 6 months later, you don't hear about the book anymore. And so it's really, really important to have this mindset of taking risks, of innovating. I always put my hand up for a lot of things. Like, I managed to get a speaking slot at the Hong Kong Book Fair, the International Book Fair, which is quite a big fair. Like, they brought these big authors, from overseas. I pitched myself, managed to get a speaking slot there a couple of months ago. I pitched to magazines. I even pitched to a bookstore in Hong Kong, the leading bookstore here. And I went there and I said, hey, would you consider to support a local author from Hong Kong? And now my books are there and they're super supportive. They have them like in the front row with Britney Spears and Arnie.
Is this a dream coming true then?
I mean, of course, it's definitely a dream, but also I want to be very transparent. When people see my book there, next to Britney Spears, and because it is there and I have screenshots to prove it, and Elon Musk, they're like, oh, wow, you've made it and you've made so many millions. No, there's very little money in books. You have to sell tons and tons of books to make money. So is this a dream coming true? Absolutely, because it's something that at a personal level and a professional level, I really, really wanted. But from a monetization standpoint, you really have to do all the things as your book starts to sell more and more. For me, the public speaking is really what I monetize the most. And then my whole vision is whenever I launch a book, I have this ecosystem. So I connect it to the chats that I'm doing. I introduce it to my clients. I really try to make sure that is one more piece of whatever I'm doing. So yes, just to say that if you want to make a lot of money from books, just having your name next to Michelle Obama is not going to be enough.
You don't publish a book to earn money. You do this for reputation. Would you agree on this?
Absolutely. I think is really, I call it brand equity. To give you a very specific example, my book that I wrote about my life living in different countries, I wrote it because I really wanted to have a legacy for my daughters. It's something that is important for me. But I talk a lot about cultures because I've lived in all these different countries. And so there's a lot of storytelling about inclusion and culture, which happens to be one of the topics that I talk to corporations. Last week, for example, was that the World Day for Cultural Diversity. So I had these different webinars to my different clients. And guess what? At the end of the presentation, I have my thank you. I have my QR code for my LinkedIn, and Pam, my book is there. Next thing, the head of people of one of these companies, I had a meeting with her this week, and she said, oh, Veronica, I got your book the other day. And so that's really how you start to build the brand equity, not by having a book out there hoping that it does really well. That book has to serve another purpose. It's either you are building your career as a public speaker, or it's helping you maybe generate revenue for something else. It could be a paid newsletter or whatever it is. But the way that you really monetize the books is by making it as part of an ecosystem. Outside of that, for brand equity is amazing because people have a positive bias towards authors. When they say, oh, you've published a book on Amazon, amazing. Yes, anyone can do it, really. So there's a lot of this positive bias that people think that it's amazing that you're an author. And so that really helps with your equity and your branding of whatever you want to do, whether you're a personal brand expert, whether you're an expert in your field, a psychologist that publishes a book. That book doesn't really have to do extremely well for that person to have more brand equity and say, oh, I actually published this resource book that complements my work as a psychologist.
How did you combine being a writer and having all this life experience and also being a mom back then when you said, this is the day, today I'm going to start writing or opening a new chapter of my life and start writing a book?
There are some days that change your life, really. And for me, that happened in Australia. And I have a picture of that day. I took my girls to the beach on the Gold Coast. And this was at that time where I described at the beginning, where I was struggling to find a job. I was feeling very lost. There was a lot of rejection. And then the girls were playing on the sand, and it was a beautiful day. And I told myself, well, what's the story I want to tell my daughters when they grow up? And I said, how about my story? How about instead of complaining or being a victim about the situation, I do something about it? And so that question was very thought-provoking because it really made me realize that I didn't want to wait another month and get 10 more rejections. I wanted to start showing my value. And that day, and I'll show you the picture too, it was a really before and after, because I went from saying, oh, rejections don't see my value, to say, well, I'm going to go out there and show my value. I went from saying, oh, I don't have a network in Australia, to saying, well, I'm going to build one. I'm going to go on LinkedIn. So that was my first platform. And I'm going to write about what I'm going through. I didn't have a 360 vision. I didn't have any of that, but I did have a purpose. I did have a why. And that's really how it started. So for me, the writing initially, it was more a way of channeling everything that I was going through. It was a way of kind of making sense of all the pieces of my past to try to be able then to move forward. And so everything that you talked about, being a mom, being unemployed, being in a different country, everything kind of started to shape up. And I didn't know what it was going to be, but eventually that's what really helped me find a new path.
Yeah, and I know that you shared that from page one, you felt your destiny was to become a writer, to tell positive stories to a world that much needs them. What would you like to share about this? Is it still your destiny, writing?
100%. Like, whenever people comment on my articles, whether it's Medium, whether it's Notes, whether it's newsletter, the common theme, if there was one word, if I was to do a word cloud with what people say about my writing, it would be things like positive, inspiring, motivational. And that's why my writing falls under that umbrella of empowering people, because that's really how I want people to feel. I always ask the question, how do I want people to feel when I deliver a session? How do I want people to feel when they read an article? And there's always that theme of positivity, of inspiring. And I'm never going to move away from that, because not only I transmit, or I try to transmit, positivity to others. When I do that, it makes me positive, because that's what I'm spreading. So it's really a win-win.
What would you like to share with those who struggle with this? They have already their book, but they don't know how to pitch stories to the press.
So there are a few things there. The first one is the actual pitch. Because one of the things that I mentioned before is that people love writing, but when you ask them what your book is about, they can't even articulate it in one sentence. And they send you a full page and they tell you for 5 minutes what the book is about, and then you're lost. So first, having a clear pitch that is specific, that is relevant, and that is clear. I always use these 3 principles. I call them the CSR: clear, specific, and relevant. So you have to have that clarity first before you go to anyone. Like I said, I think I was very clear when I said my book is procrastination. It's for people who struggle with that, and I'm going to give you a no BS methodology that works for me. That's my pitch. A bit nicer when I talk to publishers or stakeholders. But having that pitch is really, really relevant. And then is having the mindset that the no is part of the process. I was able to speak at a book fair in Hong Kong because I got many no's from other book fairs. I was able to get deals here in the Bookazine, which is this bookstore in Hong Kong, because I approached them and I approached others and they said no. I was able to be featured in a magazine because I went to them. My book, The Flight Home, got an award because I applied for an award. I applied for multiple awards and I did my research. What are some of the indie awards? And I won that one. And I think we have to go with this mindset. The same mindset when I publish an article on Medium. And sometimes it does great, but sometimes it doesn't. In fact, I think like probably 80% of my articles don't do great, but the 20% that do great, they do really well. So that works for me. And so having this mindset that having no's, it's okay. Like on Substack, so many people tell me, oh, how do you manage to get so many likes on notes? And it's true. Now, if you look at my notes, many of them have hundreds, 200, even 600 likes. A month ago, I had 0 or 1, which was mine. And it's part of the process. So what I tell people is like, don't worry. It's like when you're having a conversation and sometimes you make comments that are going to lead to great conversations. And sometimes you make comments that don't lead anywhere. It's the same in the online world. It's fine. If no one read it, good. It's an opportunity to write another one.
Could you share a bit more about this triangle between LinkedIn, Medium, and Substack?
What I mean by an ecosystem is that everything that I do has an impact on another piece, right? That's what an ecosystem means. And so, for example, I'm going to talk about today. So that is very, very timely. I published a note yesterday that was a motivational note. And the note said, if you only have 30% and you give 30%, take that as a win and high five the person in the mirror. So that was the note. And it had quite a nice feedback. So I thought, I could actually do a Medium article out of that. And so I did a very short article. I'm a fan of very short articles on Medium this morning. And now it's already having a little bit of traction. That article, at the bottom of it, I put my Substack newsletter. And so now my note was the fuel for a Medium article that is going to get some money on Medium and is going to attract Medium writers, Medium followers into my Substack and become subscribers. So that's a very specific example, but I think it explains very well what an ecosystem is about. It's really trying to connect the dots between the different things. Very often when I write on LinkedIn, if it's connected to my newsletter, then I'm going to invite my LinkedIn network to go to Substack. Vice versa, a lot of people now are very against Medium, and I think you just have to make it work. Like every platform has its purpose, and every platform has its different way of working. For me, another thing that works is using my Substack, where I already have like a decent subscribers base, to put some exclusive Medium articles. And it's very important to say exclusive because you don't want to share the same thing across 2 platforms, and invite my Substackers to go into Medium. And it's great because from the Medium stats, I can actually see that I have quite a few Substackers who go and check my articles. That creates more traffic. So it's signaling to the algorithm, oh, this is doing well, let's boost it a little bit more. And so that's my idea of an ecosystem, is really trying to have a 10x mindset. When you do something, how can you create a ripple effect out of your content? Because you're more efficient, you're going to have more views, you're going to make more money.
Veronica, if you're thinking about this funnel, what would you say is on top of the funnel and what's on the bottom of the funnel?
So for me, the bottom of the funnel is the subscribers, because the subscribers is the people who give you a vote of trust. So usually they have had some touch point with you before. And so at more the top of the funnel, more at an awareness level, you would have your posts on LinkedIn. In Substack, it's very clear because you have, and it's like dating in a way. You have your followers. So that's the people who are, okay, I'm interested. Then you have your subscribers, who are the people who are like, okay, I'm going to give you my phone number. Then you have your paid subscribers, which are the people who take you on a date. And then you have your founding members. I have one. So Notes plays a really, really good role. And in fact, for me, talking about the ecosystem of Substack in particular, is really Notes that triggered a huge growth. Like in the last month, I had almost 1,000 subscribers in 1 month. Considering that I have 2,700 and I've been there for 15 months, is huge. And I'm convinced that most of it comes partly from recommendations, but a big part of it is because of Notes, because people see you, then they see you the next day, they like what you talk about, and then they give you a vote of trust. And that's where they go kind of one step down in the funnel, where they go to a deeper intimacy and more engagement by becoming subscribers. And then, of course, it's the paid subscribers.
I started sharing short form posts, and I see that you are doing this as well. Do you think your audience misses your long form pieces somehow?
I think there's a time and place for everything, right? And I'm not saying that only minimalist writing works, but what I do see is that our attention span, because of all this bombardment of information and platforms and so on, is getting shorter and shorter. You're competing with a lot of other writers out there. And I also know myself as a reader. I know that if I'm able to get something that is short, that is actionable, that is valuable, I love it. It's like an energy bar, you know, when you're doing a marathon. It's amazing. And so that's the style that I decided to go for, because there is a public for that. Of course, you're always going to have the public for the big sagas and the Harry Potters and all of that. I'm not going there. I'm really talking to a reader who is maybe a busy mom or a busy dad or a busy entrepreneur who wants to get something super actionable. To be very honest, at the beginning, when I started, especially with books, when I started writing them and they were so short, I was like, oh my God, are people going to think that I'm a fraud? Surprisingly, the most common feedback that I receive is how great that it's a book that I can carry with me without having, to do weights. And I can read in less than 1 hour, have something very actionable. So it's definitely something that has worked for me. And it's something that I apply to my notes. Most of them, I counted the other day, they have less than 30 words. I do a lot of short writing. I do longer stuff as well on Medium. But I do a lot of short writing on the short form. The publication, which I know that you publish quite a bit as well, is a maximum of 150 words. And again, going back to the funnel, these articles that I write of 150 words, very short, 1 minute. At the bottom, I invite the readers to go to my Substack. In my Substack, my newsletters are longer. They tend to be 5 or 6 minutes, because that's when I have an opportunity to go deeper into those specific topics that I want to discuss. So it's really about being strategic on when you want to be short, when you want to be a little bit longer, and always leading with value.
Hey, it's Christina. Do you want to learn more about going from zero and publishing your first book? Then the Online Writing Club is for you. Join more than 6,000 smart writers inside our community. You learn how to build a daily writing habit and go from zero to finally self-publishing your first book with Amazon KDP or with Gumroad, finding an indie publisher, or even become a published book author. Just subscribe to my newsletter for more. What do you think about reading? Is it correct, thinking about you, that you are reading a lot?
So to be honest, I don't consider myself one of these people who is always reading at all. But what I do, and I think that's what really helps me, I'm an introvert. And so by nature, I listen a lot and I observe a lot. And that means that in any conversation, I'm listening probably 70% of the time. So I'm actually absorbing. So whether it's a book, whether it's talking to people, whether it's reading, whether it's having a conversation with clients, I get much more. And so you're really able to use that to your advantage. I'm able to see trends. I'm able to see who my readers are. I pay a lot of attention to their comments. Very often my readers' comments become my next article because I know what interests them. And so it's not only about reading, it's about consuming information in general and having the mental capacity of saying, okay, what do I do with this? Like, how can I repackage this? How can I give it a different twist? And so that's what I think is what really helps me a lot with the writing, like getting inspiration from all the different sources.
I know that you've talked for the EU office in Hong Kong, international summits, and also corporate clients like Michael Page. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Sure. And the big question that people ask me, because I listen to the readers, is how do you get started? I think that's the big thing, because once you have an opportunity, I think a lot of people are able to put together a workshop or a keynote. And the big thing to get started is to find opportunities to speak in public. Don't think about the money. Don't think about monetizing anything. Think about what opportunities can I have to put myself out there, build confidence, have exposure. And so how I started was to finding podcasts that were always looking for guests. And I was in Australia at the time, so I started to pitch to podcasts. I found a platform that was quite good called Matchmaker, that does a matchmaking between podcast hosts and speakers. So I started with that. Then from there, I started to do LinkedIn Lives. I then created my website around that time, and I have a section which you can check called Public Appearances, where I have all these podcasts. And so appearing there was great, because then it had this halo effect of whoever was going to check my website. They would say, oh, Veronica has done this, and she's been on LinkedIn Live, and she's done a podcast. So it started with a lot of these appearances in different platforms. And then from there, you take it the next step, which is, okay, how am I going to start now monetizing it? And so to do that, you need to have more credibility. So I started with doing more pro bono work. I never do pro bono work really for corporations because they have the money. But when you think about chambers of commerce, when you think about NGOs, summits, conferences, forums in your industry, how do you start to build those networks and those connections and show up? Like this week, I spoke at a panel in Hong Kong. Last week, I was in a conference here as well. So it's really finding those opportunities to have that exposure. And then from there is really a matter of saying, what's your pitch? Going to the clients in your field, in your niche, and having that credibility, because they're going to ask you, oh, can you show me some of the work that you have done before? Sure, you can go to my website. Everything is here. So it's really building those building blocks to starting with the foundation, building credibility, and then you start to monetize it.
Yeah, and talking about monetization, I know that you grew your Substack last month to more than 21 paid subscribers. So last month, this was your biggest month, and you added 21 paid subscribers. Now you have more than 40 paid subscribers. Do you think this is one of the reasons you showed us about the building blocks?
I apply the philosophy of the building blocks for everything, whether it's public speaking, whether it's my newsletters. When people ask me, oh, how do you, because I had like a really good month, like 21 paid subscribers is like, wow, in 1 month. And people are like, oh, how did you do it? And the question is not how you get the paid subscribers, is everything that happens before. Like 200% of my paid subscribers are free subscribers who upgrade. Right? So the question is, what have you done before to send those free newsletters, build credibility, build the trust, connect with people? So all of these are the building blocks that then lead to that conversion. And the same philosophy applies to public speaking. The same philosophy applies to books. Now, so many people are bombarding me with, how did you get a deal with Penguin? And it's like, let me tell you 2 years ago how this all started. Like there's, as you said before, there's no shortcut. I like to say that there's no hitchhike towards success. You have to put in, the miles. And it's really about paving the way one step at a time.
Yeah, and now I have some rapid fire questions to end this. I know that you are a polyglot and a language aficionado, and you lived in 9 countries and visited over 50 countries. I know that your dad was a diplomat. What's your favorite country to live?
I don't have a favorite one. And the reason why is because in your life, as you said before, in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, you change, right? You change as an individual. And so every country is amazing for a different phase in your life. Like, for example, when I was a teenager, we lived in Brazil. It was amazing to be a teenager there and to have all my girlfriends and to discover, the new things of life as a teenage girl. Then when I was in my early 20s, I moved to China. And at the time, there were not a lot of foreigners. So it was all about the adventure and getting to know a new country and all the excitement and learning a language that was so different. Now that I'm more settled and I'm in my 40s, I have a family. For us, Hong Kong is a great place. It's super safe. It's super international. I want to give my kids exposure to learning Chinese, to having a very multicultural network. And so my answer is always, you're going to find the best, if you have the lemon tree mindset, you're really going to find the best, in each and every country that you live in. So I don't have a favorite.
And Veronica, what is your favorite activity to do with your kids in Hong Kong then?
My favorite thing to do with them, I love exercise. So anything that has to do, like sometimes I take them on the scooter and then I chase them running so that I get a little workout as well. We do a lot of swimming together. So everything that is related to sports, it's 2 of my favorite things, is being with my family and doing sports outdoor. For me, that is the best combination. One thing, when I was in Australia, I didn't have any help. And so I wanted to be able to exercise. So I got this double pram. And I used to do running, actually racing, 5K racing with my daughters in the pram. So that was one of my favorite family moments ever.
Now, Veronica, I'd like you to say something in German to me, because I know that you once also learned German.
Okay, something very simple. Ich habe in Deutschland gelebt.
Yeah, sehr gut. Yeah, you lived in Germany. Perfect. And what are your plans and goals for 2024 and 2025?
2024, my goal is to, so professionally, is to continue doing what I'm doing. To be honest, I mean, of course, my big goal is to publish my new book, which is now being postponed to January, but is really continuing what I'm doing. I don't have like this big one goal that I want to achieve. And the reason why is because of this mindset of the building blocks. So I want to keep growing my Substack. If you want like some numbers, I know people love numbers. So by the end of the year, I want to have 10,000 subscribers. I'm going to work really hard to make that happen. I want to continue having like my public speaking. I want to take my public speaking to more of an international level. Right now, most of what I do is in English. I like to start doing in Spanish, in French, in Portuguese, whatever of the languages that I speak. I don't have any more plans for books. I think when it comes to big books, I'm done for now. Like I want to get that going. And for 25 is continuing doing the same. One of my big things for 2024 was actually to do less. I was on Twitter, for example, last year, and I had like a really a dramatic end in Twitter. Didn't go very well for me. I've written about it on Medium as well. Not dramatic in a bad sense, but I never really managed to grow much there, which is a good thing because you always have to question the platforms, your strategy, what you want to do more of, what you want to do less of. So I'm constantly rethinking and reiterating my strategy. So for 2025, my goal is to stay in my lane, and continue what I'm doing and adding more blogs to my little castle.
Veronica, now if someone wants to connect with you, how can they connect with you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on Medium, and if you want to discuss more about writing, well-being, and mindset, I'm in the Lemon Tree Mindset on Substack. So these are really my main channels.
Thank you so much, Veronica. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much. Very, very excited. And I can't wait for the next one.
Wow, this was a great session with Veronica. For more interviews and tutorials, subscribe to my channel and hit the like button so more people can see it. See ya!